Welcome, future doctors, to another episode of the Future Minority Doctor podcast with Dr. Zulma
and Marina, where we bring you conversations to empower and inspire you to contribute to your community and the world by becoming a doctor.
Welcome back, future doctors. Thanks for joining us for yet another episode of the Future Minority Doctor podcast. It's our pleasure to really be here and have this platform to share our wisdom and share just our motivation for you to become doctors, because we love seeing young people going down this path that we were on so many years ago. We love helping to inspire you and to empower you to get to medical school and to become physicians that serve your community. Wouldn't you say, Dr. Z?
Definitely. We are now in 2024, so we know we have a bunch of new students that want to become doctors. And we get excited. So I know right now it's that time to be prepared and being ready to apply. Some of you this year, some of you might be taking the MCAT any minute now as well, or pretty much in a couple of weeks. And Marina and I have gone through it all. And again, this is for you guys, just to support you and know whatever you're feeling. Totally normal, but we're backing you guys up.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you mentioned, so some students will be applying. Some of you are not quite there yet. That's okay. But this episode is especially for those of you who might be applying soon, especially if you're applying to MD schools through the AMCAS system, or the American Medical College Application System, or AMCAS. Then you're going to discover that as you fill out your application, you have the option to write an essay that is called the Other Impactful Experiences Essay. It is considered optional, but we want to tell you why you should really strongly consider writing it, taking the time to write it. I know it's just another essay to write. And so some people say, well, it's optional. I would really rather not do it because it's already so much work to write my personal statement and all my activity descriptions. This is just another one. Do I really need to do it? And we're here to tell you why it's really important that you consider writing one. Now, this used to be called the disadvantaged essay back in the day, and it only changed names last year in 2023. So they changed it from the disadvantaged essay to the Other Impactful Experiences Essay. And they did that mostly to help destigmatize it and make more students feel comfortable considering writing one. Dr. Z, do you remember if you wrote a disadvantaged essay back in the day?
Yes, anything that was disadvantaged, I made sure that I used it. So if you're listening to us and you're a first generation college student, medical student, whatever it might be, take out the optional part. Please use this to your advantage, because I feel personally for myself, it made a difference for my college application, for medical school applications, for everything. So I feel like it shouldn't be optional if you fall within those categories. I think you guys should totally just take advantage of it.
Yeah. And what did you write about? Do you remember what you included in your essay?
Oh, yeah. I included, I was a first generation college student, but I started it from when I was younger because my parents didn't even get through elementary school. So there was a lot of portions in my life where I was disadvantaged. And that's just from the beginning. The language was the other thing. And then also just having that lack of help. The socioeconomic status as well, I included that in there as well, because I was one of those kids that we were always, in the free lunch programs, all that stuff too. So I definitely highlighted all those things. Again, I did that in my undergrad college application, and I did it in medical school too. So I think it's important to highlight it because it really speaks to who you are. I don't think I would be the person I am today if I didn't go through all that. And it builds a lot of resiliency. And regardless of your background, I think when you get to medical school, the ones that survive and make it is because we have that resiliency. And I think all my hardships throughout my life and my disadvantaged moments is what really gave me that power and strength and endurance to pull through with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with everything you just said. Yeah, so let me clarify more about what this Other Impactful Experiences essay is. The AMCAS application specifically phrases it this way: have you overcome challenges or obstacles in your life that you would like to describe in more detail? This could include lived experiences related to your family background, financial background, community setting, educational experiences, and or other life circumstances. So remember, it's pretty broad, right? Family background, financial, community, educational, or other life circumstances. So it's really asking you if there's anything that you didn't get a chance to highlight in your application already through your personal statement and your activity descriptions that you would like to talk about, right? And a lot of students make the mistake of saying, well, I'm not really disadvantaged compared to other people in my community, so I don't really want to write this essay. But really think twice about it. And we'll kind of give you some examples today and talk through what are possibilities of what you could talk about. When I wrote mine back in the day, I talked mostly about my family going through economic rough times. My dad changed jobs a lot when I was growing up. My family almost lost our home multiple times. My parents filed for bankruptcy. And also, I just grew up in a community where we had okay schools, but I really did not have the educational advantages that other students had by the time I got to a college level. And so I talked about how that impacted my college performance and my struggles. But I also talked about how, overall, even though it wasn't that pleasant going through those struggles, I really grew from it, right? And so I tried to frame it in a positive way.
And you saying that, Marina, I think it's important. Sometimes because of the community we live in, we think it's normal. And it really takes somebody on the outside to tell us, wait a minute. No, it's actually most students that are applying to medical school or college, they didn't go through that. You think it's normal because that's what was around you. I mean, that's what all my friends went through. And you're like, oh no, I had it better than they did, right? Like sometimes you even think that it really takes somebody else. So if you're unsure if you would benefit from the statement, ask someone. Right? Like ask somebody. You can call maybe even just like somebody that you're comfortable with in your undergrad campus. You have us. You can always shoot us an email and then we can shoot you an email back saying, yes, you definitely qualified or give you some tips. But when you are in a disadvantaged situation, you feel like you're not because that's what is around you. And I say that because I did have a friend who had applied to medical school and didn't think qualified for that portion when they applied to medical school and didn't get in. And it took someone from a medical school campus that he sought out to just get some advice. And while he was having that discussion and she was overlooking the application, she asked him, how come you didn't apply and, fill out this portion of disadvantage? He's like, oh, I'm disadvantaged. And she's like, yeah. And had to bring up those moments in his life that he was. And he goes, I never thought about that. I just thought that's how everybody was. Right. And I didn't think I was any different. So very important.
Yeah. And I just had a conversation with a third-year medical student who's rotating through my clinic. And he talked about how his wife is a better writer than he was. And so she kind of bounced ideas back and forth when he was applying to medical school. And she told him, hey, like, you have to highlight these like struggles that you went through. You immigrated to this country. You like faced poverty as a child. And he was hesitant to talk about those things because he felt like he didn't want to take advantage or to milk that story. And it took his wife telling him like, hey, you have to tell your real story. It's not taking advantage. It's not trying to seek pity. It's telling your real story because that is part of who you are, just like you said, right? It's part of what has created your identity. And it has also created some superpowers in a way for you because you as a physician will have the capacity to understand other people who are going through those same situations, those same circumstances, those same life struggles in a way that somebody who did not go through those cannot completely understand, right? So she finally convinced him and kind of like helped him to like craft this narrative in his personal statement and throughout his essay and his disadvantage statement. And he totally is thankful for that perspective now. He says she and her nudging for me to write about these things totally helped me get into medical school, right? Yep. But at the time, if he had been left to his own devices to do it, he might not have written about those things And, his chances of getting in might have been affected. Now, again, I want to emphasize this is not milking your background. It's not trying to seek pity. It's just being your real authentic self and bringing your real authentic self and those experiences that are going to be valuable for your future patients to the table and presenting what you have to bring to the table of the physician workforce, right? So I think some other reasons why people maybe don't write this essay is sometimes they feel that they have to have had some crazy challenge in their life. Like they had to have faced extreme poverty, or they had to be a refugee, or they had to have a parent die or something like that in order to qualify. And that's not true. You really have to look at the bigger picture of your life circumstances, especially compared to the average person who is sitting on an admissions committee, right? So remember that the average person on a medical school admissions committee is more likely to come from a middle class or an upper class background themselves, very likely to have had college educated parents, and maybe even physicians as parents in many cases. They probably did not grow up in the same environment that you did. And so they will not know how to automatically read between the lines and understand that you might have had a longer distance to travel than other pre-meds to get to the point of applying to medical school. They may not have had the same cultural and family expectations that you experienced. In other words, you really have to paint a picture of that for them. Even if it's normal for you and your community, it's not necessarily normal for the person reading your application. So in my opinion, painting this picture of the real circumstances of your life and all of the challenges you have faced, or at least some of them, some of the major ones, is not asking for special treatment. It's just telling your story truthfully. And like I said, it's showing that you have experiences that will help you to relate to your future patients. So anything to add, Dr. Z?
Yeah, it's you as a doctor to patients, you'll relate. And I feel the other added benefit, and why I think the schools ask this question too, is you're going to go into a medical school class where you're going to become very close with your class because you'll be spending 4 years. And the diversity in experiences is so important to be able to cross teach each other. So through this building of relationships, you might be sitting to someone who had completely the opposite life of you and experiences that you weren't even aware existed as well. But you share them like, oh, wow, there's a different way of being. And then they also learn from you. And I feel for those friends that I've had that were completely different as far as like their life experiences, they learn something when they're seeing their own patients as well, right? So I think it goes beyond patients, but also working within a team, a class, and even your colleagues when you're actually working within a medical facility. You just bring extra flavor.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there are studies that show that diversity benefits everyone, right? When we come from different experiences and different assumptions and different acculturations and all of that, then we come together to a table to solve problems and to learn that having different experiences and different perspectives actually benefits the whole group, because the group as a whole is more creative, is more innovative, challenges each other more to come up with better and more robust solutions, right? And so it's important that you bring your whole self to the table and highlight that in some ways, right? Now, also some students might feel like, well, I already wrote a personal statement and I already mentioned some of the things about my background in my personal statement or through my activities. And so do I really need to write another essay that says the same thing? There is always a way to do that, right? Because in your personal statement, it was so focused on your motivation for medicine. And then your activities are so focused on your clinical and volunteer and work experiences that they might not fully capture like the narrative of your challenges. So it's okay to be a little bit repetitive. Even if you mentioned it somewhere in your personal statement, it's okay to mention it again through this other impactful experiences essay. Don't be shy about it. It's better to include it if there's any reason to than not, right? So please don't miss this opportunity to tell your full story. Now, we have a few examples of these essays to share with you today, and hopefully they'll just give you a little bit better idea of what you can write about in yours. These are just a few examples, of course. Keep in mind your story may be completely different, but worth sharing nonetheless. All right, so first, Dr. Z, go ahead and share the first one.
Okay, so here we go, guys. Growing up in rural Mexico allowed me to experience life in the fields, which came with its challenges. My dad, who only finished elementary school, always said, "Study so you can have a better future than mine." After school, my siblings and I had to feed our livestock, clean their stalls, and return home to do our homework and prepare for the next day, which started at 5 a.m. With no middle school in my town, we had to take an hour-long bus ride to get there. Even though we did not have much time for schoolwork, I knew that helping my dad benefited our family's limited finances. My family and I immigrated to the U.S. due to the violence in Mexico when I was 17. I was committed to learning English and continuing my education toward becoming a doctor, though I had no idea at that time what that entailed. I attended community college in the morning and high school in the afternoons until I earned my high school diploma. We later moved to Salinas, California, where I attended community college while working 25 hours per week. My parents worked in the fields and needed my help to pay for rent. Getting into UC Berkeley was a dream come true. I was the first in my family to attend college, but I initially struggled without proper study skills or mentorship and with the responsibility of helping my parents financially.
All right, so that essay was from a student who went through our application coaching program named Ruben, an amazing, amazing person with such an incredible story of everything that he's overcome. And I'm happy to report that he got into medical school last month. This past month, he will be going to medical school in Arizona, and he's so excited, so excited, especially given everything that he's had to overcome. But all of those things that he talks about in his essay, he did talk briefly about some of that stuff in his personal statement too. But this really kind of put all the pieces together in one place, right? Talking about, growing up in Mexico, talking about, having to take an hour-long bus ride to middle school, talking about the violence in Mexico that caused his family to immigrate, going to community college, learning English, working during college, going to a four-year university, and then finally, and then also he talks about struggling. He says, I was the first in my family to attend college, and I initially struggled, in college. So kind of putting all that narrative together. And when I read this, and then I read the rest of his application, things make more sense because I understand the context of his life and the unique challenges that he has had to overcome. So maybe when I'm looking at his grades, I'm on an admissions committee, and it's like, okay, it's maybe a lower GPA at certain points of his journey. But then I look at this, I'm like, okay, this person has had to travel an immense distance to get to where he is. And wow, I admire him even more for that, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's kind of what this statement helps to do. All right, I'm going to read another one. This is from a student named Brianka. I was born and raised in Jackson, Mississippi. When I was 14, my mother lost her job and our family's healthcare coverage. My mother suffered from diabetes, and I remember her struggling to find an affordable insurance plan that would cover her medical needs. She ended up relying on Medicaid and public programs to access the medical care she needed. Because my mom was struggling financially and with her health, I had to go live with my aunt, which was a point of transition and a time of adjustment for me. My mother could no longer afford my school fees, but thankfully I managed to get scholarships in order to complete my high school education. I relied on federal grants and scholarships to complete my undergraduate education while also working different jobs in order to earn extra money when needed. Eventually, it became harder to balance work and school as my classes became more difficult and demanding of more time. My grades began to suffer as I needed to devote more of my time to my studies. I had to learn how to study efficiently and what worked best for my learning style. I sharpened my study skills further in my master's program. Though I have faced many difficult challenges, I am thankful for the personal and professional growth that has resulted from them. Okay, so Brianka here talks about a lot of things. And this story, this narrative that she puts together about her unique set of challenges, shows me a couple of things about her. So first, it shows me that she struggled economically, right? She may not have had all of the advantages of life. Now, I know Brianka, and she explained that she went to this like private Catholic school. It wasn't a great school necessarily, but because of her family situation, it wasn't this like ridiculously expensive private school, but it was a private school. And she had that economic struggle kind of running throughout her growing up years. She had to go live with her aunt because of her mom's challenges. And of course, that causes some, emotional challenges and social challenges. She also understands what it's like for a family member or herself to be on a public assistance program like Medicaid, right? People who are on Medicaid don't have as much choice, unfortunately, in what kind of doctors or procedures or medications they get because it's a public assistance program. Now, it's wonderful, but it can sometimes take 3 months to get an appointment instead of 1 or 2 weeks, right? So she has that perspective. This essay is telling me she's going to understand families on Medicaid more than someone who never had to go through that experience, right? She talks about having to work through college to support herself and having to really learn how to balance coursework and work and how she struggled, but she figured it out in the end. And I really like the sentence at the end that says, though I faced many challenges, I'm thankful for the personal and professional growth that has resulted from them, because then it's taking all those challenges and it's making like a mature reflection on how they impacted her life and how she grew from them, instead of just saying, boo-hoo, I had to like face all these things and other students didn't. It's not saying it like that, right? It's framing it in a positive growth perspective. And then we have another example for you. Go ahead, Dr. Z.
Okay, so here's another example. I grew up in rural South Carolina where the closest hospital was an hour away. Whenever someone in our household got sick, we normally relied on rest and agua florida, a Latino cologne remedy, to bypass any medical bills. I maintained limited exposure to healthcare until my junior year of high school, when I began carpooling with my mom to her job as a medical interpreter at the nearest hospital. Despite the long commute, I began volunteering there for extracurricular experience over the summer, and that experience sparked my interest in medicine. During my freshman year of college, my mother and stepfather separated, and soon after, my mother was laid off from work and struggled for a year to find another job. As a result, I made the difficult decision to transfer to a more affordable in-state university, and I changed my career trajectory from medicine to engineering so that I could obtain a job to help support us both more quickly. These circumstances limited the time I could spend pursuing my interest in medicine during college. Fortunately, the 3 years I have now worked as an engineer have allowed me to save funds for family emergencies and the application cycle, and I am circling back to pursue my original dream of becoming a physician.
All right. So that was from a student who is now in the middle of his first year of medical school. Exciting. He was in our very first cohort of our application coaching program. And I really like his OIE essay because it highlights a different type of challenge, right? He talks about how he changed majors in college in order to have a career that paid more so he could help his family through a difficult financial time and save money because the application process for medical school is really expensive as well. And, when I first kind of could help his family through a difficult financial time and save money because the application process for medical school is really expensive as well. Who had majored in engineering, who had had a few years of working as a successful engineer and doing really well, and then had circled back to medicine. And so for him, it was really important to try to explain that story through his application of why did he change careers? And of course, he did some of that in his personal statement. But then this other impactful experiences essay also helps to put the puzzle pieces together, right? Of like, oh, there was real financial struggle and economic struggle in your family that influenced that decision. And I think it's really important to be honest about something like that, right? Because if I'm reading an essay of someone or like an application of someone that I do not know at all, and there are pieces of the puzzle that don't completely make sense to me, then I'm going to kind of just wonder, is this person being completely honest? Like, why is there this, gap in time? Why did they make this decision or that decision? So this essay is an opportunity to kind of put the puzzle pieces together for someone who might be having questions as they read through the rest of your application, right? And maybe you didn't feel like your personal statement was the right place to talk about it, or you didn't feel like it really fit into any of your activity descriptions. So this is the perfect place to do that, right?
Yeah, I agree. I feel like in medical school, we should say, there's a lot of people who come from different career paths, and then they decide along the way that they want to change their career path and become a doctor. But not all of them have this story, right? Some of them did it as a result of working in a certain career that they thought and said, wait a minute, maybe this isn't what I want to do. I decided I wanted to do this. But what highlights his story is that all along he knew, but there was a huge financial struggle where he had to even change college so it'd
Uh-huh.
be more affordable. And I mean, he had to change his major as well
Mm-hmm.
to be able to provide for his family. And hence, he had a plan then. I'm going to change. I'm going to save up some money because I don't have any other resource for money. And then I can go back to that track that I had initially wanted to. So that story is very different than other students who apply to go to medical school who just decided to have a career change. And it's impactful. It's very impactful because it shows his devotion and dedication to medicine as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I'm sure that was not an easy decision, right? It's like you're giving up your dreams. It feels like you're giving up your real dreams for a while or putting them on the back burner while you do something that you got to do. But a lot of students have this situations. They're all going to be different, but situations where maybe you had to help support your family. Maybe you had to be a caregiver to someone. Maybe, there's so many situations that are possibilities that it helps to explain through this essay, right?
Mhm.
Because you're helping the person who's reading your application to get a really complete and honest view of your life trajectory and your path to medicine, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
Exactly.
So again, these are just a few examples from students who were willing to share their essays with our audience. But let me go through a couple of other things that you could potentially talk about in your other impactful experiences. And these include any kind of economic challenges, educational disadvantages, such as if you came from, the inner city or a rural area where the quality of your education through primary and secondary school was not great, and that impacted your ability to succeed in college, or maybe caused you to have a rough first year or 2 years, or made you have to go to community college first. Talk about that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Also, having to work to support your family at a young age, or maybe during college or beyond, needing to be a caregiver to someone in your family, coming from a rigid culture, religion, or family that created psychological challenges in your pursuit of a medical career. I have read some essays that talk about, women in my family were discouraged from pursuing careers, and I had to kind of overcome that mindset, and maybe my family rejected me or judged me. You can talk about things like that. Physical or mental health challenges that you or a close family member faced. Parental separation or parental divorce that impacted you psychologically, economically, or educationally. And not just parental separation, but also just being raised by a single father or a single mother as well. I've seen some people talk about being in foster care or being adopted after a family tragedy, things like that. Frequent moves that may have impacted your education, whether it's because your parents were in the military or there was another form of instability in your life. Homelessness. I've sadly read some essays of students who faced periods of homelessness in their lives. Anything that caused a detour or a long delay in your journey to medical school, that is something that you can talk about and explain through this essay. Living in a place where you did not have much access to clinical research or other opportunities. Facing discrimination like sexism, racism, or discrimination based on your language or your religion. And also experiencing a learning challenge, such as a learning disability, ADHD, etc. So you don't have to include all of these, but talk about the ones that feel most important or most impactful for you. That's why it's called the Other Impactful Experiences essay, right? What impacted your journey, your path, your story, right? And you get to choose what you talk about. Please don't talk about anything that you don't feel comfortable with someone knowing about. Like if you have struggled with depression, but you really don't want other people to know about that, then don't talk about it, right? Like anything that you reveal through your application is fair game to be asked about in an interview or other setting. So just, make sure that you truly feel comfortable disclosing the information in this essay before you write about it. And like with all of your other essays, like we always say, keep it personal and tell a story. Anything to add, Dr. Z?
Yeah. And, sometimes it might not be something that directly happened to you, but indirectly. I recall that, while I told my story and I had a lot of barriers and obstacles throughout my life, but I also highlighted and I would take these moments where they would ask for the extra, like something different, even within the interview. My best friend comes from the deaf culture. So I grew up where her parents were deaf. And I was exposed to that culture. So it's not that it was within my own family, but with her. And just that experience alone to watch that, you can use things like that as well, because it also sets you apart, my own family, but with her. And just that experience alone to watch that, you can use things like that as well, because it also sets you apart from other applicants, but also I actually incorporated those types of experiences as well. And it came up on some of my interviews and people would ask me questions about it too, because it's not something that happens. So, if you have something like that too, feel free to use this space, because I might have not used that in my personal statement per se.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. All right. And then I just want to make one last note that I sort of touched upon earlier. Make sure that you talk about your challenges with mature reflection rather than just ranting or complaining about them. If you simply say, I had to work 2 jobs to support myself through college, which led to lower grades, and just leave it at that, it can come across as making an excuse for poor performance. But if you say, I had to work 2 jobs to support myself through college, which forced me to improve my time management skills over time so that I could balance school and work, then that comes off as more mature and more reassuring that I'm like, okay, you went through this challenge, but you've figured out how to overcome, right? Whenever possible, frame your challenges in a positive light by reflecting on how you've grown either personally or in another way from that experience. And
yeah, I would agree. I would agree with that.
So that's all we have for you today. Hopefully you found this episode helpful. And like Dr. Z mentioned, if you ever have a question or like really want a perspective on like how to write about this thing, feel free to reach out to us via our website or our emails, Dr. Zulma or Dr. Marina at futureminoritydoctor.com. Thank you so much for listening and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Peace and love, everyone.